Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. You're coming to us today for a view from the front office, which, labeling this 2020, it's obviously been a very interesting year for us as office staff and supporting our students and teachers in the time of the pandemic. I am Heather Williams. I work for the Adult Academic Program of Robbinsdale Area Schools. I just celebrated my 7th anniversary with the program on Halloween, which was a great day to start. I met most of my coworkers in costume, which was very interesting. So this is just some basic information about our program. I will be talking later in the session about how to help support teachers with SID and different types of reporting. And then I also have a couple of colleagues here with me, Shannon and Becca, who will introduce themselves and talk through different parts of what they do currently to help support teachers and students in this time of the front office looking very different for all of us.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Shannon. I'm a paraprofessional at Metro South. I work in the GED classroom and primarily with higher students, GED, college prep, adult diploma. I do a lot of registration. So I'm here to talk about what we've been doing for remote testing. You can see kind of the background information on our program in the southern suburbs. The teachers have been amazing. I think just about everything we offered before has been moved online, not you, phlebotomy, but I think just about everything else. And we have almost exactly the same number of students as this time last year. So I'm very happy that everyone is able to kind of push forward here, and we'll introduce you to Becca.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Becca Bair, and I just have to say that I always tease Heather when we do this session about how nervous she gets. And I have to say that now that we are virtual, I have butterflies in my stomach, and I rarely get that when we're in person. So I work in the Great Rivers Adult Education Consortium, and we serve Woodbury, Cottage Grove, St. Paul Park, Newport, and then also Hastings. I've been in ABE for 11 years, I think, 9 years, since 2011. We serve around 600 students a year. And like Shannon said, we are nearly entirely virtual. We do have a employer partner renewal by Anderson. And so we do have in-person classes there. And we are doing some in-person orientation, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But other than that, we have been fully virtual as far as all of our ESL and GED and transitions classes. All right, so I'm going to start talking about intake and orientation and how we've been doing that, like Heather said before, in 2020, so it looks a little bit different. And we actually just started this model that I'm going to talk about. So so all of our students are going to register online. We moved our registration form to a Google Doc, and that's where they will fill out their registration. After they register, students receive a confirmation, and then they are sent an account for read theory where they would take their pretest. So we use their read theory reading level to place them in the correct, well, what we think is the correct class. And we're finding that that's mostly accurate. You can tell which students were nervous when they took their test after you have a conversation with them and you're like, oh, wow, you're really advanced. You actually, you shouldn't be in that class. But for the most part, that's been going really smoothly. We're also finding that that's a good way to get people to understand that we're going to be virtual and that they need to have some level of digital literacy in order to be successful in our program right now. So once they finish their test, then we check their scores and place them in the correct class and then email them their schedule. I then copy the teachers on that email and ask that the teachers are the ones communicating from there on out as far as like how to log into class and that kind of thing. The only other communication that I'm having with the student at this point is setting up an orientation or testing appointment. And then they continue to talk with their teacher after that. So that's for our ESL students. GED and diploma is pretty similar, that they're going to register via, well, depending on which program they're going with, but usually it starts with a phone call or email to either a coordinator or a teacher. And they help after meeting with the student via Zoom or a scheduled phone call, they will help the student determine which path is going to be more beneficial for them, whether they go GED or diploma. And once they've got that figured out, then they have them complete the registration depending on which program. And then they do their testing one-on-one, and classes are set up beyond that. The other thing that we do have in person right now too is our GED testing center. And that has always just been a one-on-one. It's a very small room, so everybody gets like their own testing session. So that's been kind of nice that we've been able to continue that. It didn't really have to change at all for COVID times. So that was helpful. And then, so like I said, the students will set up an orientation, and at orientation, we keep the groups no larger than 5 students at a time. We try to keep it small for one-on-one, but also for obvious social distancing. The new ESL students are given the CASAS goals test for the most part. Now that that's been extended the last couple months, we've been giving them the life and work more, but we had been transitioning. So we're in the process of figuring out which way we want to move forward with that. So then the staff who's running the orientation right now, it's one of our teachers. She will show them how to log into Zoom and MobiMax. All of our students get a MobiMax account once they start classes, and then any other DL sites. So depending on the class that they're in, they might use ReadWorks or USA Learns or whatever. So they also get the students set up in those sites. We check to make sure that the students have proper technology, and if they don't, we do have Chromebooks that they can borrow or check out from our program. So we go over how to do that. And then we're also finding that there's a handful of students that are signing up with somebody else's email address, whether it be a family or friend, or an email address that they can maybe check on their phone, but they might not have access to on their computer because they don't know their password. So that's something else that we're checking with them to make sure, because a lot of our communication is happening via email this year, and just to make sure that they know how to properly use their technology. We also have, we use the Ventures books, and we sell the books to the students. We just buy them in bulk and then sell them at cost to the student during registration. And then a couple classes are also reading novels, some for purchase, some to lend. So we also give them those at that time. So that's pretty much what our orientation looks like. And it's been really fun to see also just like how the students really do how the students really do embrace the ability to email, where before it was like pulling teeth to get them to send an email, but now that they're doing things more virtually, that's been really fun. I feel like I have obviously much less in-person interaction with the students, but I'm getting to know them more one-on-one because we're getting emails that way. So I'm going to turn it over to Shannon to talk to you guys about testing. And we do have time at the end for any questions. So but feel free to put things in the chat as we move along as well.
All right, so thank you, Becca. So again, I'm with Metro South, and we are doing remote testing. Huge shout out to Marilyn Dvorak and my colleagues Jill Lynch and Louise Hamer did so much ahead of time to get this all set up and running. And I'm just going to kind of tell you how the process goes from my perspective, which would be the student end as it is now. We are getting a fair amount of new registrations. We have a form online on our website, so they come in that way or by phone. We did have to add a lot of questions to kind of assess what type of device options students might have to work from, what type of internet access they have, and then we sort those requests out by the program they're going to. So I work with the higher students that are coming into the English class, not doing the remote testing. They're getting a test or some kind of assessment via email. So in line with our curriculum, they're mostly using a ventures test right now. And then the students on the very high end of the English classes or GED, college prep, diploma, those students would make an appointment to try a remote test. They started out as 2-hour appointments. It's a labor-intensive process. We really have smoothed it out over time. I would say they're 90 minutes now or sometimes less, so we're getting there. We are kind of trying to get most students to be doing a CASAS goals reading test. So that's a 2-part process. The locator is 15 minutes. And then that puts them on a leveled test, which I believe all those timers are 75 minutes. We have the option to do CASAS Life and Work remotely as well. We haven't been using that because for now, those students, I think, are kind of covered by the ventures assessment. And then we do have other options available. As Becca was saying, this requires a high level of digital literacy. It just does. And in this case, kind of a high level of literacy overall. So I'm kind of only addressing what the students on the higher levels will be doing. Heather, next slide, please. So this is kind of what the testing process looks like. I actually am working on 2 devices. So on one device, I can have SID open for information on the student. And then we're doing this through a Zoom call with the student, and then CASAS eTests Online, which is the management program that goes along with these tests. So on one device, I have SID open and eTests Online, and I can see what colleagues are logged in, if anyone else is testing. I can see what students are logged in, and as the student is testing, I can see what question they're on, how much time they have left, and I can intervene in their tests if necessary. We have tried to give them a lot of information up front and really set the expectations. Unfortunately, we have still had a student here and there show up at our empty building to take their test. So we're always working on kind of refining that process. The students get 2 separate emails. So one is just a link to the Zoom call. So if nothing else, hopefully they can click there and then we can answer questions face to face and get them started. And then they get a separate email that has all the tech requirements, the testing instructions, and it will guide them through the process you see there of checking their internet speed in advance, verifying that they can access Zoom and Chrome, testing camera, microphone, speakers. It sounds like a lot. It kind of looks like a lot on paper, and I hate to overwhelm a student. But the truth is, I feel like you can tell way before this point if this is going to be an appropriate test or not. You know, students that are at this level are responsive. You can tell from their emails and what they're saying on their phones, you know, on phone calls. You can tell from the way they describe the devices they have. We do have to talk about that in advance because the instructions differ substantially depending on what the student is working on. And of course, you can't necessarily see what's going on their end. So we do try to walk them through as much of that as possible beforehand. And then on the proctor end, on my second device, I would be opening a testing session for eTests Online and a Zoom call. So I connect with the student and we're able to speak face-to-face. There's a kind of security process, checking ID, checking their workspace. In general, the idea, of course, is you want them to be working in a space that's as private as possible, quiet as possible, with as few interruptions as you can get. Not always super realistic, but we try to set it up that way. And then I open the tests on my end and share the screen with my student and then grant them remote control access. So on their end, they shouldn't have to download anything more. That just allows them to use the mouse on their side and answer the questions and click through everything. The way it starts, especially if the student has never used a test like this before, they're going to open up on a blank screen where they have to enter their name and birth date, a few things to make sure we have the right person. And then when the test itself pops up, it's always practice questions. So they have some time to try the controls, zooming, scrolling, clicking back and forth. and just making sure that they feel comfortable with how to operate the testing system before they actually have to answer any questions that will be scored. So once they're ready to go, we can talk about any questions ahead of time. When they feel comfortable on my end, then I turn the camera off so they don't have to look at my head in the middle of their test, and mute my mic. And then I'm just hanging out there to observe. So if they have a question, they just say it out loud, and I can turn my mic back on and pop on and help them out as necessary. It looks like a lot on paper, but actually it's been going pretty smoothly. Get that far. So last slide, please, Heather. As I mentioned, we do have other options. Can we move the slide forward? Thank you. For students that don't have a compatible device available, or if they're not at this level of digital literacy, we have Chromebooks that students can check out. So distributing some donated devices, which is awesome. As I think everybody knows, we have COVID exemptions we can use if we absolutely can't get a test. But I think for the most part, we have been able to assess people coming in. And one of the main reasons, CASAS reading level indicator, which has been a nice fallback plan. It's very different from doing the CASAS goals testing. It's not so labor intensive. It's not so long. You can see it's 30 minutes instead of 90. It does not require a proctor. So the student is just receiving a link, and then they can do it when they have time to do it. It is the most glorious part is it's adaptable to just about any device. So students will have a phone to work on, typically able to open this and complete it, which all sounds wonderful, but the big con is that it doesn't actually work for NRS reporting. So you can't use it for level gains, but it does help for placement and to kind of get somebody in the door. You can see that sample score report there. You don't get a scaled score, you just get an estimated EFL. So it has taken us a little time, I think, to figure out where this fits into our placement, but I do think it's helpful to get people in the door. Registration in the remote universe can be a little frustrating, so this is definitely a convenient option. And I find it helpful too, because I work with these higher students looking to get into GED, diploma, college prep. We do get students that request those programs, even though it seems like they're probably not ready for it at all. If we give them this test, I think it's nice. They don't actually get a score on their hoping for. It's kind of a gentle way to transition them in to say, this test is newer. We're still learning to interpret the results, but we recommend this other class for you instead. So between these options, I feel like we've been able to get a test for most students. I've been surprised at the student reaction to doing CASAS goals online, especially if they've done it before. They're very happy to see progress and have that FaceTime with the proctor. And I think it feels like, okay, we're back in real school again, particularly the GED students who have to do a lot of things online independently. So I think it's going very well. Again, many thanks to my colleagues who have done so much work to test it and get it up and running. And I think I'll send it back to Heather then.
Thank you, Shannon. So I am here to talk about how to best support teachers and exit students as we're navigating through this pandemic together and working remotely and not able to interact with our teachers and students as regularly as we were before. So these are just some of the things that I am focusing on right now as an office support person. One of the main parts of my job is to enter data into SID. So monthly, as you know, we use many different distance learning programs to collect proxy hours. And some of those programs do have an administrator account that I can log into and pull the reports for the entire program at the end of the month and then record those proxy hours in SID. Some of the programs, it is up to our teachers to actually go ahead and email me those reports so I can record the proxy hours. It depends on the teacher and what DL programs they're using in their classroom. And I'm also in charge of creating new classes. When COVID happened, we were encouraged, obviously we closed out all of our students of their current classes, and we were encouraged to create a new COVID class for that student to record which type of program the teacher was using, so Zoom or Google Meets, and record that in the actual title so we could go ahead and properly award contact hours into those programs. So each teacher got a new class created for them and are able to record the hours there. And then any additional contact hours for some special classes that we have going on, I'm also responsible for recording. So the teachers will just send me that information. Like currently we have, pre-COVID, we had a class, a speech and leadership class. So it was a lot of students giving presentations kind of modeled after like a Toastmasters type group. And they are continuing to do that via Zoom for those students that are interested in participating. And so those contact hours are sent to me, and then I'm able to record them properly in SID. So really kind of any way I can support our teachers and students and make sure that we're properly awarding contact hours for the time that teachers are spending with students is a big part of my job right now, a big focus of mine. Another thing, when Becca and Shannon and I were preparing for this, that came up as we were talking amongst ourselves, is how messy it is right now with closing out and exiting students if they haven't been attending or if they haven't come to class since classes started again in September. So the way that I did this is I duplicated all of our summer COVID classes. We had more summer programming this past summer than I think we have in the past, because teachers were able to continue that virtually and keep offering those classes. So I duplicated all of their classes and their current students into a new September class. And as you know, some of those students just did not come back to us when classes started again in September. And so as you can see from my example here, it does definitely look like I have some cleanup work to do based on these dates of some of the last date of attendance for these students or when their last hours were awarded. And in the past, when we're in person, our teachers would fill out an exit form for each student that would include their most recent testing information, as well as maybe the reason that they were leaving, just so we could keep a record of that and type that into SID when we were exiting out that student. And now it's really not as easy. Teachers are communicating with their students so frequently, it kind of feels like office staff might be a little bit left out of that. A teacher might come down and say, so-and-so is leaving, here's their form in the past. And then we were kind of kept in the loop as office staff. And now that's not happening as frequently. So I would encourage you to, tell your teachers that you're there to support them and that they can share that information with you. And sometimes now I am copied on those emails, so I know a little bit more about what's going on with some of our students if they're leaving, and the teachers have that reason recorded. But then there are just some students that stop attending and we don't know why or what's going on in their life. So what I'm trying to do right now is to better support my teachers and make sure that their class lists are clean. I am going ahead and removing students I look through each class list every couple of weeks, I would say at this point. And if a student hasn't attended in quite a while, or if they don't have any attendance, they haven't accrued any attendance in September, then I'm going ahead and removing those students for the teachers, just to try to keep a clean class list for them and make it more convenient for them. Another thing that I'm really trying to do with SID right now, and to be a good support for our teachers, is providing them different types of reports. And so I took this little screenshot from SID here, and I think it's important that we show contact hours and share that with our teachers on a monthly basis. We typically send around a report in our monthly all staff meetings. So teachers can review and see, how many contact hours their class is accruing, and just be in the loop on what it looks like now versus, what our contact hours were last year. So we kind of do like a year over year report. Obviously not necessarily as helpful right now because this year looks a lot different than last year. However, I think it's still important that I compile that information and share it with our teachers, just so they're in the loop. I also provide GED testing reports on what students have taken tests, what their scores are. So sending that information out to our teachers on a monthly basis is also really important. And then I'm constantly monitoring testing history information. As Shannon mentioned, there's the COVID exemption right now. So I'm just trying to make sure that we are able to get credit for all of the contact hours that our teachers are spending time with our students. So I'm monitoring the testing information quite frequently. And another way that I'm really trying to support teachers right now and boost enrollment is providing whatever type of marketing support I can. And so one thing that we have sent out, and I wanted to share this with everyone, we were able to work with our print shop at our school district to get these postcards made. And what I was able to do using the data in SID, I was able to go in and look at last year, all of the students who had been attending our GED lab classroom and see who had been closed out last year. And then I was able to generate a contact list from there with their names and addresses. And then our teachers took the time to go ahead and write this personalized message for each student. And we were able to go ahead and mail that out to all of our students, inviting them to come back, because I think some people were really unsure about what was happening with programming due to COVID. And so this is just a good way to get out our message to tell them, yes, we're still offering classes. They're having a great time in their Zoom classes. We want to encourage them to come back and join us. And then we are currently, that's a task for me for next week for sure. We're also going to send a postcard out to our ESL students that will look something like this with a message from the teachers, reminding them that we're still here, we're still offering programming, and we're here to support them in any way that we can. And then another way that I can help provide marketing support is using previous information about enrollment in some of our special classes. We are trying to boost our special classes right now and offer more of those in this time of the Zoom world. So any information that I can provide to our teachers and our marketing staff, I think is really helpful to decide when we should offer a class, which classes are the most popular. So really just kind of trying to be a data guru and help support our teachers in any way that I can. So we went through that pretty quickly, ladies. We've definitely got plenty of time for any questions that folks have. And I see there's some conversation going on in the chat as well. And some resource sharing too.
Yeah, you've got a couple of comments from Marilyn, also from Laura and Linda. I wonder if any of them would want to unmute and speak up since you have a few minutes. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Okay. Hi. Just the question about the remote testing. We found that they have to have a Windows 10 computer. You as the proctor have to have a Windows 10 computer, but the student also needs a Windows 10 computer with all the updates current. Because I think we've come across a few that they don't update it and it just doesn't work then. And most Macs, I don't know, Shannon might chime in if she's found a Mac, like a laptop or a Mac computer that hasn't worked. They all work pretty well. So, and if they have a personal Chromebook or an iPad, the instructions for them to follow to get the platform or the kiosk on one of those devices is so long and so hard that we haven't had a student successfully install either one of them. I had our tech try her personal iPad And she just shook her head. She said, that's just too much for, especially someone whose language isn't necessarily English, and they have a lower level. But, as long as they have a Windows, a PC, or a Windows 10 and a Chromebook, it's been working pretty well.
This is Shannon. Thank you, Marilyn, for jumping in. Just to add to that, one thing that I definitely have noticed is even the terminology, students don't necessarily call their devices by the names you might be expecting. And having a Chromebook that's a personal Chromebook is different from having one that they got from our school district, which is different from having one that they got from another school district. So Mary Lynn did share a resource. If you look at our website, metrosouth.org.
Sorry, Shannon, your audio is cutting in and out. I wonder if one of your co-presenters can finish what
You
you
can see our
Heather or Becca, could you maybe chime in? Heather or Shannon's audio is cutting in and out. I'm going to go ahead and mute her so that someone else can chime in. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Marilyn, do you want to maybe share, she was just talking about the website. Do you want to share that information with everyone?
Sure. If you go to our website, metrosouth.org, we have our registration link for term 3 on there now. And students just complete the Google form, and then we contact them either via email or we call them, I think mostly, for initial contact. I think that's what she was talking about. But yeah, you can check out what our process is on our website.
Thanks. And Shannon, sorry about that. Go ahead and use the chat box if there's something else you wanted to add, though, since we're having a little audio trouble. All right. Thanks, Marilyn. Heather and Becca, did you want to take any of the other comments or questions in the chat?
Yeah, I'm just going to take a look right now. Oh, I see a comment about postcards. That is kind of the hit or miss thing with sending out mailings to folks is we do get a lot of them returned. What I do with that is if you can go into SID, if you get the returned postcard, you can check that that student's address is not current, or their email is not current, or their phone number isn't. So I do go ahead and audit that when we receive them back in the mail to try and keep our data clean. But I think overall, it seems to work well for us to send out postcards. We typically do that over the summer to encourage students to re-enroll again in classes in the fall. And this year obviously is so different. We waited a little bit, and then, like I said, we'll be sending out the ESL postcards as well.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, so we don't do the postcards. We have done mailings in the past, but we have been sending out emails. So I will pull emails for all of our students for the last couple of years when we have a class that maybe is lower in enrollment, just to see if anyone has a family member or friend or themselves that would like to come back. And also our new classes that people might not know about. So we send out those emails as well. And same thing, Linda, I get those returned, kind of like Heather was saying. And so I try to clean those up instead when I get the bounce back email as well, and just like deactivate that. So I'm just reading oh, Heather, I think that last comment's to you. So you don't invite mid-year, but you come back, but it'll come back in the fall, right?
Yeah, typically what we do is we would send those out in August with the information of, this is what you need to do to re-register. And we actually color code them too. So we do two separate, we do a yellow postcard for folks that are, still on the class list and we're attending basically through the summer. And then a red postcard for folks who have been closed out. So I go look back on that information, and then we send those out typically in August. But this year it was so different with everything being virtual. We mostly relied on email, and many of our students, like I said, we had ongoing enrollment more so than we have in the past via the Zoom classes over the summer. So we kind of held off on, we had enough students that came back and were planning on attending in the fall. So we held off on sending any sort of postcard like we would in the past. And then decided we kind of want to do something for students that are closed out to boost our GED enrollment. And so that's why we started with the GED postcard that went out last month to try and, fill up some of those classes. And then we'll do the ESL postcard now. So it's a little bit different this year, but it seems to be working well for us.
I also see that Linda commented about the site 5-year report, the attendance report, which is super helpful. We use that a lot in our program too. We set our contact hour goals based on that, and then we review those in all of our staff meetings as well. So if you're not familiar with that report instead, I would encourage you to check it out. Another thing that we've been doing this year is pulling, we've done it in the past, but it's less exciting, is pulling the contact hours report for DL as well. And it's been really fun to see with this. I mean, if you have to have a silver lining on COVID, is to see how many more hours we've had, proxy hours that we've had versus in class time, or, this year versus last year, which has been really interesting. And it's just kind of fun. The teachers are enjoying that. They're enjoying learning the new platforms a little bit more in depth and working with their students on those. And that's been just a really great benefit for our teachers as well.
I really like Darla's suggestion in the chat, by the way, and that's something I should probably implement rather than just taking their address out of SID. I think a phone call would probably be a very good idea.
So we still have about 8 minutes left or so. So if anybody has any other questions, they can be specific to our presentation or just anything else that we can share about how we are running our programs right now. We are more than happy to answer those as well.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to read through the chat again, make sure I didn't miss anything.
I'm willing to share like some things that we've done to find students who haven't been here since COVID. We've had to do some targeted outreach at a couple of our sites, and you can pull the student contact list that's listed under the reports tab. You can sort it by building and you can sort it by date range. And then you can look at when students were last in classes at a building. And I mean, if you've got people who haven't been here since COVID started, yeah, use any marketing tools that you can to pull them back in, whether it's an email or a postcard or whatever. We've done that for a couple different sites since COVID started.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion as well. Linda, thank you for sharing that. Julie just asked how we're using social media during this time. For us, so we were huge on social media prior to COVID. We have always had, class pictures and things that we were sharing. And it's been tricky because you can only look at so many Zoom grid pictures before you're kind of bored. So, I mean, we still do use social media. We also like Facebook and Instagram, but we are moving more towards, I'm not sure if you're talking about those types of social media platforms, or if you're talking like Remind and those, like, I don't know that that's really social media, but another form of communication. But our manager still keeps our social media moving, but I would say that it looks much different than it did prior to COVID. So I always want to say 6 months ago, but it's been longer than that now. So I don't know, Heather, do you guys use social media much?
Yeah, I was just going to say at our program, we actually have a pretty decent Facebook following for our Facebook page. And that has continued on through COVID. Our marketing person is just phenomenal, and she always finds like such great posts to make. And a lot of people follow that, and they like, and they kind of comment and interact with them. One of the biggest things that we've used our Facebook page for, so we're fully online learning right now, and our district is referring to it as distance learning plus, and the plus part of that is providing at least a little bit of support for students who might need some extra support right now. So we have the ability for students to come in and use our technology if they don't have it at home. And obviously it's like a very limited basis, and it's by appointment that students will be coming in. But one of the other things that we've been doing is packet pickup for our students, and announcing that on our Facebook page has been super helpful. So students know the hours for that, and they're looking, at our Facebook page to know, this, like we post, this teacher has materials for you. If you're in this teacher's class, then these are the times that you can come pick up your materials. So it's been helpful, but other than that, I don't think we use any other sort of social media aside from, our website, interacting with our website right now.
I just looked at our Facebook page again while you were talking, Heather, just to see what kind of things have been posted there lately. And there's a lot of flyers. We had a teacher make he made like a little commercial for our program, and it's super cute. He used like all of the staff used our like Bitmojis and stuff, and it's really cute. But I would agree. We're still using our social media. It's functioning differently.
Another thing that we've utilized too is if we do have announcements the office staff want to get to our teachers, we'll make a Google slide with that announcement on it, and then teachers are able to share that in their Zoom meetings with the students. So that's kind of like social media. We're making an announcement and they're putting it in their class, and that's been really helpful too. And we made a video for our students from the office staff. It only took 800 takes to get it quite right. People were muted when it was their turn to give their announcement, but we're all just doing the best we can.
We are just about at time, so if people have any last minute questions, go ahead and let us know or put those in the chat. Otherwise, we will go ahead and close the session soon.
And I just want to say too, feel free to reach out to Becca, Shannon, or me if you have any other follow-up questions or anything you want to share.
Great.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for coming. This was fun. It was my first time presenting virtually, so that was fun.
Well, you did great. Thanks so much. If the presenters want to stay on camera and take a few questions, I will stop the recording in case someone had something they wanted to ask you more privately. And thank you so much for coming. Your next session begins at 1 o'clock, so you've got a nice long lunch break.